Are you guys stupid? I'm the boss, and you all must do what I say.
In this video, I will be going over why self-employment is so attractive. I will try to keep it short and simple, with 3 points that I will be touching regarding self-employment. Self-employment, it seems to be so attractive. Man has the innate feeling of wanting to write his own fate and not be able to depend upon someone else. But in today's age, I believe it's very even more attractive for various reasons. As a matter of fact, if you look at various polls, you may come to a conclusion that people seem to dislike their job more and more. And this could be for various reasons, but the main reason that I've seen is because they don't like the way they are managed. A lot of the times, it's not the job duties themselves that make people dislike their job, but it is more the way they are managed. On top of that, debt seems to be more higher than ever. It seems as though it keeps getting harder, even if you go to college, to be debt-free, to enjoy the economic prosperity that people in the past in this nation used to enjoy. Which leads me to my first point: economic freedom. Granted, if you are successful at being self-employed, you will enjoy economic freedom. You may also enjoy economic freedom by working for someone else, but the economic freedom that comes from self-employment is more attractive since it's based on you managing your own work. Now, the main end goal of being economically free is not so much based on you being able to buy whatever you want, you being able to go wherever you want, and you being able to eat whatever you want. These, of course, are benefits that come from being economically independent, is that you don't depend upon anybody else but yourself. That means you are not a servant to anybody else. As a matter of fact, Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Thomas Jefferson in his thesis is also known for saying the following: "I, however, place economy among the first and most important republican virtues, and public debt as the greatest of the dangers to be feared." If you have a decent living but no independence, this will go hand in hand with you not having any individual liberty. Thus, you will not have any participation in self-government. We live in a day and age where people depend upon the banks through debt to have some sort of decent living. If you pay attention closely to the economical setting, Americans have had a decent living, but this has come at a cost. A lot of times the cost is they become servants to corporations in order to pay the banks that they owe a lot, if not everything to. However, being servants to corporations has resulted in people having to comply to mandates and agree to ideologies that are of a destructive and tyrannical nature to the liberty of an individual. A liberty grounded by good morals and well-founded principles. In other words, you are just provided for to enjoy a consumeristic lifestyle. At the end of the day, you don't run anything. You don't run anything, or at the very least have a say in anything. Do you really have individual liberty? Which leads me to my next point: values. If you don't have economical independence, then you have to depend upon a corporation in order to provide for you so that you can provide for the bank whom you owe. However, in turn, you must comply with the values of the corporation. A lot of times these values may clash with your own personal values. Here is the interesting part. A lot of times the values of the corporations are dictated by the state. In turn, the corporations demand favors from the state. And a corrupt, decaying state has values that align with the collective. A collective that may have goals to eradicate individual liberty, agreeing hand to hand with the state's demands. So when the collective or society has become corrupt, tyrannical, you may not go against them, because if you dare to go against them, the corporations will fire you, because, well, the values of the corporation and the values of the collective are one and the same a lot of times. Even if these values are corrupt and tyrannical, if you dare to go ahead and stand up for your values, since you are not economically independent, you need to depend upon these corporations in order for them to provide for you. But however, if you want them to provide for you, then you have to acquiesce to their own values. So let's summarize. Self-employment is attractive because, one, it is economically independent, or in other words, it brings economic freedom. You don't have to depend upon the banks. Additionally, you don't have to go and be the servant to a corporation. which this in turn allows one to not have to be complacent to the values of a corporation or identity who threatens individuals to lose their livelihood, violating his or her values through a collective dictated by the state. And by the way, we saw this happen very recently through COVID. A lot of people were threatened that if they were not to take the jab that the state demanded, they will lose their livelihood. In other words, they will be fired. And well, a lot of people are in debt. Therefore, if they are fired, they cannot provide the bank the payment they need so that they can keep their houses and cars. Not only through COVID, but we also see this through gender ideologies that tend to force individuals to acknowledge something that they personally do not believe in. Which leads me to my last point, transformation. Mayor Rothschild is famously known for saying the following: "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." A free, economically self-independent person doesn't need to rely on corporations or institutions in order to be a free individual. Keep in mind that at the end of the day, whoever you are working for, you are basically building up their company. And if that company tends to give in to the pressure of the state's demands, then you are pretty much advancing a company that is not for the good of society, but that is in for the benefit of the state. The economic independent person who has adequate values can go ahead and also use his wealth and his influence to transform society in a good manner. First of all, by establishing a good business model of practice, a business model that respects liberty and doesn't give in to the pressures of ideologies. Oftentimes people want to become economically independent so they could go ahead and show off their cars, their homes, so they could go ahead and say how good their life is. But that is a foolish way of looking at economic independence, because economic independence goes past through that. Economic independence goes ahead and transform an individual to the point where that individual has political independence as well. And well, if you have political independence that comes from economic independence, then it's very hard for you to be ruled by elitists whose interest is not for the best of you. So when people are in debt, all they have is the ability to make life choices and to have a decent living. However, they are opted out of much more important premises, such as the common man having control over his government, over his economic independence, and over his power in society. I once read that this nation, at a certain point, had an estimation of 98% of its population being self-employed. It's funny because we think that nowadays being self-employed is the anomaly, but back in the day, or at least at a certain time in this nation, being self-employed was an anomaly. So if you want to see society be transformed, there are two ways it could be transformed. Either you have people in massive debt, or you have people in massive economic independence. And I hope that we individuals, if one day we achieve economic independence, that we go ahead and do good with it and not copy corrupt corporations. Much more can be said about this, but for the sake of the length of the video, I decided to just keep it up to 3 points. That is all I got for you guys today. Till next time, Explosive out.